Recognizing the contributions and influence of Hispanic Americans. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Wayne Dawson.
And I'm Christy Capel. Welcome to a special edition of Fox 8 News as we celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month. Over the next 30 minutes, we'll share some stories of faith, inspiration, and Latino experience through the eyes of those living in it, including a history lesson you may have never been taught, and how it was uncovered through one woman's curiosity.
Plus, a man who spent half of his news career in television then changed paths to keep his neighbors informed and connected.
And the NFL wasn't his first choice, but what this man ended up doing may inspire others to follow their dreams. We begin right here in our own backyard, and nothing says Cleveland more than the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Well, you can say that again. While language can be a barrier that separates people, music can be a common thread that actually unites us. Our Alex Stokes shows us how the Rock Hall is honoring Hispanic artists who have helped shape rock music and inspire generations of fans.
Since the beginning of rock and roll, we've seen deep influences of Latino music.
With this electric guitar, a young Richie Valens wrote his smash hit reinterpretation of a Mexican folk song, La Bamba.
By introducing Spanish lyrics into a rock and roll song, even that in alone in 1958 hadn't been done before. So that was groundbreaking, that was innovative.
His contributions join those of other artists of Hispanic heritage who have their names etched in gold on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductee wall.
Vinny Lopez, aka Mad Dog of Bruce Springsteen's E Street Band, everybody from Greg Errico of Sly and the Family Stone, Robert Trujillo of Metallica, and Linda Ronstadt, among others.
En la noche silenciosa.
That last name may come as a surprise to some.
Mariachi, my family are Mexican, and that is my roots.
From her grandfather and previous generations, and recorded an entire album kind of celebrating her roots.
Precious artifacts help tell these inductees' stories, like Trujillo's bass guitar, the satin vest worn by Errico, and
in our brand new Play It Loud special exhibit, we feature the famous Wolf guitar by Jerry Garcia of the Grateful Dead.
Director of Fan Experience John Gerke says the Dead fostered a powerful communal aspect.
Jerry Garcia always talked about how he tried to break down those barriers between performer and audience. It was more about we are all sharing in this experience together.
One musician that Gerke says certainly has shared his heritage is Carlos Santana.
Man, it's a hot one. These collaborations, it's doing what we see in music today. It's introducing his music to the fan bases of these other artists and vice versa.
Pre-pandemic, the museum has participated in events like the annual Latino Heritage Fest, but in today's world, they encourage people to make use of their free online educational resources.
Rock and roll has never been one thing. It's never looked one way, it's never sounded one way. If you have one image of rock and roll, I would encourage you to broaden that representation.
In Cleveland, I'm Alex Stokes.
The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame has also created playlists on Spotify so fans can learn about these Hispanic artists and others.
Here in the U.S., it's estimated that 43 million people speak Spanish as a first language. So it's sometimes a challenge for Hispanic Americans to keep up with events in their community. Reporter Kathy Quinn shows us how a newspaper in Kansas City is not only keeping them informed, but also in touch with their neighbors.
Family and faith, music and merriment. Life for a Latino living in the United States among other Hispanics is a fiesta. Latinos love to communicate. They love to share their stories of their culture with each other, with communities. And for many of these folks, their life is centered around their church, like Our Lady of Guadalupe, where they pray together and they play together. It's where a young future journalist practices skills of storytelling.
I have to have stories in the newspaper that have an impact on our community.
Joe Arce's had an impact, 50 years in news, 26 in TV news, and 24 years at KC Hispanic newspaper, published weekly with a 35,000 readership.
Oh, they love it. They love it because they get the information that they need And so often, mainstream media, sometimes they don't cover the Latino community on a daily basis, a weekly basis, and so we have to be that vehicle to get that information out to them.
Stories told in both English and Spanish, reminding them of the unique bond they share with other Latinos.
And I love seeing the paper when it comes out and seeing the big headline stories, right, that are being translated so that people who speak Spanish can understand what are the big stories, what's going on in politics, what's going on in business, as well as the celebrations.
And Latinos love to celebrate their heritage, celebrate their families, and celebrate their accomplishments, like Joe Arce's Hispanic newspaper, which keeps thousands of Hispanics in his community connected.
I just want to be known as a journalist. The day that God calls for me, I just hope that people remember me more as a journalist than anything else, because that is my love.
Kathy Quinn, Fox 4.
Sometimes celebrities who've become successful also want to help others in their community. And it's no different for Chef Christina Martinez. And as reporter Kelsey Fabian shows us, as many restaurants in Philadelphia struggled during the pandemic, Martinez used her business to help others get by.
Feeding people is a blessing.
215. That's the number of meals that are prepared in this kitchen every weekday. And it's all thanks to a rotation of local chefs. And Chef Monty Tillai cooks here every Tuesday.
Today we're doing butter chicken.
The space is called El Compadre. It was originally the home of South Philly Barbacoa, which has since moved across the street. During the coronavirus pandemic, owner Christina Martinez found a mission for El Compadre, turning it into the People's Kitchen, providing meals for those in need.
From the first day we found out about COVID, we started to give free meals. Every day has been very intense with the usage of different condiments with different flavors of taste that get integrated in the preparing of meals.
As a Mexican immigrant, Martinez wanted to make sure people were getting to taste food from all over the world, which is why uniting chefs with different cultural backgrounds has been very important for this project.
This is the traditional from India, and this is what I wanted to bring it up to the people. And I'm happily serving that for people who would need it.
Different cultural influence is important, and also the fact that every family, no matter what status or position in the world, should have access to amazing local chef-cooked meals. So that's what we're doing every day.
Carly Porzan works with 215 People's Alliance. It's an organization that helps fight racial and economic inequalities. It has teamed up with the People's Kitchen to help distribute the food. The mission is simple: serving the underserved and inspiring others to do the same.
We are here every day with a lot of enthusiasm, energy, and very tired, and yet continue to love and be able to inspire many people who will support other communities that are in need.
After I cook, I walk outside. The people who are eating out there, they all tell me, "Chef, the food is great." So that's all I like to hear. Karma is a good thing, right? So what goes around comes around.
In South Philadelphia, Kelsey Fabian.
A sense of community and belonging is all many people ask for.
But that doesn't come easy when you leave your home to find a better life in another country. Up next, how people escaped revolution, carved out a community that is still thriving today.
A lot of Tejano families are tired of not seeing themselves in the story of Texas.
Finding their rightful place in history, how one woman's search for her family has led to stories that are only now being told. Imagine leaving your country to start a better life for you and your family. Well, that's what happened more than a century ago as people came to Oklahoma after fleeing the Mexican Revolution.
And while many of them were Roman Catholic, there were no Spanish-speaking priests in the area. So they built their own church that is still thriving today.
A century ago, ousted by the Mexican Revolution, friars of the Carmelite order came to Oklahoma on a mission to serve.
2 fathers and 1 brother escaped from Pancho Villa. It was not popular to be Spanish or Catholic as far as clergy goes in Mexico during the Revolution. So they came basically to America through San Antonio, then up to Oklahoma City.
Packing Town followed the river back then, south of downtown. Fueled by the stockyards, the meat packing plants were a major employer of Latino labor. The Santa Fe and Rock Island Railroads crossed near 10th and South Walker. This was the Hispanic heartbeat of Oklahoma City.
There was a need for Spanish-speaking clergy, so the Carmelites were here at the right time, and we needed them.
Father Edward Soler, exiled from Mexico, found South OKC to be fertile ground for a new parish.
We were the first ones really to minister, and this is the church for the Hispanics from the very beginning.
The 7th Catholic parish in Oklahoma City. Officially, Our Lady of Mount Carmel and St. Therese. The church has always been called Little Flower, after St. Therese of Lisieux, known as the Little Flower of Jesus. By 1926, the small chapel had become crowded with parishioners. They built the main sanctuary, which still stands today. When the Spanish-speaking community surged here in the 70s, Little Flower was already deeply rooted, perfectly positioned to minister to Spanish-speaking Catholics.
It's very different to any other because it was built for this community and to speak the language, the cultural language of this community.
Little Flower is the oldest Hispanic parish in Oklahoma, and today one of 44 churches with a mass in Spanish. The Oklahoma City Diocese is now 54% Hispanic.
In every place I go, every place I visit, you see many more Hispanics attending masses in our churches. Churches that were traditionally not serving Hispanics now are serving many more Hispanics.
Holding tight to their faith and their heritage, drawn to this house of worship to celebrate both.
Amidst all the trials, tribulations, sorrows, and everything, they turn to God, you know. And here they can come again and be renewed.
The Little Flower Church continues to connect with the faithful using Facebook, where they now have more than 3,000 followers.
Connection is something many of us are seeking, whether it's through religion or, in this case, family. Reporter Tahira Rahman shows us how a woman in Texas discovered her family is a part of history and how she's now helping preserve other untold stories.
This is all part of Gina Rogers' family history.
This is one of his sons, Felipe.
That she didn't know about until a few years ago.
And when my dad passed away, I asked the question, where was Daddy born?
One question that would guide her next 5 years.
It was not much long after that tons of documents and records surfaced. This is the first deed in
her
the year
great-great-grandfather, Victoriano Alba, bought 160 acres in Dripping Springs in 1903, becoming one of the first Hispanic families in the area.
They were some of the first persons who helped to create the St. Martin's de Porres Catholic Church in Dripping Springs. They had donated land for a school.
John Mckiernan Gonzalez has been studying Southwest history for 25 years. He says more interesting than the Alba family's early roots is their persistence.
It's a really interesting interplay between a family story and a place's story.
Gonzalez says some Texas towns didn't want Black or Hispanic families as neighbors. Many of them were driven out by increasing property taxes. Sometimes, he says, these families of color were even driven out by terror.
Records that say that sort of like sheriff offices and real estate investors said it's cheaper to buy from the widow than from the man. So the connection between terror and land dispossession.
Still, the Alba Ranch remained in the family for more than a century. At one point, the Albas owned about 1,000 acres. It's all become more than family history. In January, the Texas Historical Commission approved the Alba Ranch as an undertold story. That means it fills a gap in state history.
A lot of Tejano families are tired of not seeing themselves in the story of Texas. It's about time to sort of like get the kind of public memory and public recognition that the work the families put into being in Hays County.
They were not even a footnote in history. That's really the reality of it.
Now on the Hays County Historical Commission herself, Rogers is working on more marker applications to make sure other Hispanic people, families, and places don't vanish once they're gone.
Rediscovered him, and he won't be lost again.
Tahira Rahman, KXAN News.
Never forget where you come from.
Well, for one business owner, it's not just mere words. Coming up next, the generous thing he's doing to make sure his Hispanic heritage lives on.
My dream growing up, honestly, was to play professional soccer.
He loved football, but not this kind of football. How a pro athlete is hoping his success kicks down stereotypes in sports.
According to a government report, there are more than 12 million small businesses here in the United States, but only about 600,000 are owned by Latino Americans.
And one of those business owners started in a garage and grew his idea into an empire. Reporter Andrea Herrera shows us how this 25-year-old turned his dream into reality.
Born and raised in central Kansas, Eddie Sandoval did not see many people who looked like him.
I grew up in a small town, and I was the only Hispanic pretty much from kindergarten to where I graduated.
His family traveled back to Chihuahua, Mexico each year to visit loved ones, bringing a piece of his roots back to his hometown.
We'd always bring back pinole because you couldn't find it here.
Pinole, a nutrient-rich ground corn used in tortillas, baked goods, and drinks, was a family ingredient that he wanted to share.
So that's kind of how it inspired me to always wanting to share my family's heritage while being able to give back.
In his final year of college at Wichita State University, as he was struggling to find a job, he decided to create his own business from his own garage.
And I found an organic blue corn supplier in Chihuahua, Mexico, and that's where I was like, I think this would be a good idea.
A few days later, he was at the border loading up half a ton of corn into the back of his pickup truck.
My mom thought it was the craziest, almost dumbest idea. They couldn't believe, I was about to graduate with a finance degree. I came full ride scholarship to Wichita State. I'd interned at some big companies, and I was gonna give it all up just to be grinding corn the rest of my life.
But he kept trucking on for 2 years, driving store to store, trying to make sales. 4 years later, Pinole Blue's products made in Wichita are sold in 300 locations across 18 states and are shipped nationwide.
It was finally worth everything I did.
He says his heritage motivated him to work hard and give back by donating part of his proceeds to the Tarahumara community, showing his parents their hard work and dedication was not in vain.
To show other Latinos and Hispanics, especially having immigrant parents, where they want the best for you, that sometimes it's okay to take the risk.
Andrea Herrera reporting.
In addition to tortillas, mixes, and snacks, Pinole Blue also sells clothing. You can check out their website, pinoleblue.com. Wayne?
Thank you very much, Christy. Latino athletes like the Tribe's Francisco Lindor have had a big-time impact on America's pastime, baseball. But when it comes to football, that hasn't been the case. Less than 2% of NFL players are Latino. Reporter Chris Hagan introduces us to one athlete hoping to use his success to inspire others.
I used to just literally wake up and just think about soccer. And my dream growing up, honestly, was to play professional soccer.
Rickerberto Sanchez's dream of being a pro athlete has come true, but not in soccer, in the NFL.
And I always kind of knew that football was around, but I didn't really get to play until sophomore year of high school.
Sanchez is now a star punter for the Indianapolis Colts, thanks in part to a huge family decision made many years ago.
Both my parents are from Mexico. My mom is from Guanajuato. My dad is from Michoacan. And they came to the United States. I feel like they did that for, a better opportunity for their kids, for themselves.
Rickerberto has made the most of his opportunity and is now a proud role model for young Hispanics, a fact that he came face to face with at a recent camp.
They were really surprised that I was able to speak Spanish, and that honestly it was really cool to see their faces when I was able to do it. But I was able to communicate with them in Spanish and just talk to them and be their friend. It's awesome to be around all these Hispanic kids that have dreams, to one day become professionals or doctors or whatever it is.
The passion for American football has grown tremendously in Mexico, and Sanchez is well aware there are many eyes on his career.
Just being able to represent the Hispanics, the Mexicans, I think that's really big, for them to see me in that uniform, and it gets them all excited.
A pro football player, American football. In Indianapolis, I'm Chris Hagan.
So far, we've shared music, religion, and even sports success as we bring you stories about Hispanic heritage.
But art can also have a profound impact. Up next, how one artist uses a generations-old technique to create more than just portraits. A work of art can be so much more than just a painting on a canvas. It can also tell a story.
And in this case, an artist is dedicating his talents to bringing the history of the indigenous people of Mexico to life. As Desiree Lopez shows us, it's done through a very unique method.
La pirografía o el pirograbado, que es la técnica que uso.
Pyrography is a slow process. There are pieces that can take from 1 week to some that take more than 3 to 4 months.
Born in Michoacán, Mexico, Jose Juan Alvarez, also known by his artistic name Huichohuacari, meaning wet dog in his native language Purépecha, says his love for pre-Hispanic art started at a young age.
A la edad de 5 años hice.
At the age of 5, I did my first pencil drawing.
Alvarez has lived in the city of Farmersville for more than 30 years and has devoted 20 of those years to pyrography, the art of making images on wood by burning it. Self-taught, Alvarez has created more than 250 pieces of art showcasing the history and culture of many indigenous groups of Mexico in his own backyard.
Se nos enseña la cultura.
At school, they teach us about some cultures, such as the Mexicas and the Mayans, but in Mexico. There are more than 60 indigenous groups.
Although the pandemic has caused for his art exhibits to be postponed, Alvarez says he has found another way to educate his community about the indigenous cultures by writing a book.
Que si a través del arte podía comunicar.
I realized if I can communicate the indigenous culture through art, why not do it through writing?
Alvarez says he hopes his art will motivate others to learn about their culture, especially the younger generation.
I've participated at many schools, and the students get amazed by the pre-Hispanic art. And many tell me they want to do the same when they grow up, and that motivates me to keep on going.
We want to thank you for joining us for this special edition of Fox 8 News celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month.
To find out more about the Hispanic community here in Northeast Ohio, please check out Hola Ohio, a nonprofit organization whose mission is to improve the quality of life opportunities and empower the Latino community.